organized by Ajahn Brahm Society Sri Lanka. So this April, I was invited to lead the day-long retreat, and I'm happy to be back after all these things we've been going through all this pandemic stuff and all the difficulties. So despite all that, I'm happy to see a practicing crowd back again. Um, I think last February, Ajahn was here, so we were lucky to have him back also briefly. So I'm wondering, can you hear me at the back? So clear enough, I guess. Do I hear feedback? Okay. So for today's topic, I thought to talk about a few things, some practical things as practitioners. Certain things you've already heard and you've been practicing, but all these simple things, the fundamental things that we need to be reminded we have to sort of revisit again and again because they are fundamental, but on the other hand, they are the difficult ones to sort of develop. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about the Sila, the precepts, because I gave another Dhamma talk recently, so the topic came up, so I couldn't help but repeat certain stuff. So you all heard this verse, Sabapapa Sakarana Kusalasa Upasampada Sajittu Pariyodapana Etam Udhan Sasana. So this verse is a good summary of the dispensation of Lord Buddha. But the Lord Buddha was telling us all along, was very, maybe the briefest of all instructions given to his sadhakas. So for monks, actually, in monastic situation, the tradition has a name for that verse, this Sabapapa Sakarana verse. So maybe I should sort of translate it briefly also, shouldn't take it for granted. So Sabapapa Sakarana, that means so you don't do any bad deeds, avoiding the papa and the kusala upasampada. You develop the kusala upasampada, develop that skill. And Satittu Pariyodapana, taming your mind, training your mind, that's then Ekam Buddhana Sasana. That's the advice of the old Buddhas. So that's the meaning of it. So in monastic situation, as I said, we call it Ovada Patimokkha. So some of you may know that monks, as fully ordained monks, we are supposed to chant our precepts every 2 weeks. So there is this full moon Uposatha and there is this new moon Uposatha. We call it Amavaka in Sinhala. So the monks gather together. So one monk would take a seat like this and by heart or by looking at a book, we'll chant the entire 227 rules we're supposed to keep. So we call it Patimokkha. So that ceremony is called Patimokkha. So this verse we just talked about, is called Ovada Patimokkha because the tradition says the first 20 years of Lord Buddha's dispensation uh, in his teaching career, the first 20 years there weren't any rules. Lord Buddha would sit with the Sangha and chant this verse, Sabapapa Sakarana. That was the only award he would give as that for that ceremony, as a Patimokkha. So hence the name Ovada Patimokkha. So after 20 years, certain people with the lack of mindfulness, lack of understanding, start to do certain things, certain misbehaviors, which led eventually uh, uh, to have these precepts. So we basically right now we sort of following main 227 precepts and some other minor precepts, a lot more than 1,000 actually. So when we think about now there weren't any precepts for the first 20 years, but can we say that they were practicing in sila? We can't say, right? I mean, there were lots of arahants, and that's the heyday, one would call it, like in that sense. I mean, the total Buddhist time may be a heyday in itself, but when you think about the first 20 years, even Lord Buddha himself reminds that he says that the first period of his teaching career was the best, he says. Only he needed to remind people. He wouldn't say, don't do this, don't do that. He would just say, this is the way it should be, something like that. That mere reminder would be enough for the Sangha to govern itself. But later the precepts introduced. So there is this, if you think about it, I'm sort of where I'm going with this. So there is this little difference between the virtue, the sila, and the precepts. Now imagine, first 20 years, there weren't any precepts, but people been keeping sila. So that explains actually, there is some kind of a distinct nature of the sila itself, even without precepts. So what could be the precept, if you want to sort of think in terms of precepts, what could be the precept that they have been keeping in first 20 years? This Sabapapasa Akaranam. That was it. So that's why it was called Ovada Patimokkha, right? So it was the only precept. Lord Buddha would sit among the Sangha and give this Ovada. That was the only precept. So at the beginning, as a principle, Lord Buddha didn't start the sasana, the Sangha, with the precepts. Because the idea is that you ordain, you come to practice, you gain saddha by understanding actually what's this thing all about. I mean, if you want to do something about your suffering, your own problems, you better be honest about this thing. So no one is sort of carrying a stick or sort of like watching you through a CCTV camera or something. So we had to be honest, and we had to be sort of self-sufficient about these things, to understand what is good and what is bad, because most of the time it's pretty obvious. So That's how the whole thing started. But later on, people with more kilesa, more sort of defilements, more confusion, like us, like myself, uh, uh, born as human, so we met the Buddha Sasana and we wanted to sort of follow the teachings, but sometimes we don't get it actually. What is this abstract teaching of Sabababa Sakarana? Okay, we understand the meaning, but sometimes it doesn't come to us very easily actually. Oh, this is something I should be doing, and this is what should I do. Likewise, so the Lord Buddha came up with some guidelines. Okay, you don't do this much, not that either. You do this thing in this way. This is a proper way to do it. Not like that. So there are these do's and don'ts. Lord Buddha started to sort of give to Sangha, as rules, and which later became precepts. And Lord Buddha stopped doing that Vada according to tradition. Then he allows the Sangha to, okay monks, now on you chant your precepts as the Patimokkha, he says. So hence the system, to this day we are doing that chanting because the precepts are our guidelines. So there is this sort of a difference. So why should we be aware of this difference? Because we keep 5 precepts, some keep for the opposite 8 precepts, and I think the crowd here also some are maybe keeping 8 precepts here, and sometimes 10 precepts as a layperson, as a novice monk, a Samanera monk, and then after that, as Upasampada monk, you keep 227. So sometimes you see, if you have some experience with keeping stable, which is a fascinating thing by the way, it's not like a person who keeps 5 precepts has like a 5 bars in his cell, like you are in you are kind of incarcerated, and your cell has like 5 bars, 5 precepts, which you can't escape. It's not like that, right? So, but every now and then you see that although you keep these precepts, still you do certain things that either wouldn't please you or the others. Basically, papa, unwholesome things. You are not breaking a precept, but still something happens. So, some may oblivion to this thing, thinking that I'm keeping the precepts, so precepts equals virtue, sila, so therefore I'm on the right path, so I don't have to work on this thing. Right? Sometimes it happens, right? And sometimes people who keep Poya, they like observances and participating for meditation, sometimes often criticized by the others. See, that person is going for meditation, I don't know what are they doing with this meditation, because so and so is all over the place right now, something like that. They criticize you for that. So it's a very funny situation. If it's not unfortunate, because still we are meditating. We haven't finished our work, so of course we sometimes we do mistakes, but others will perceive it in that way. So that's a little kind of sidetracked, but the point is that you have precepts, but still there are these, you can call them like loopholes, or I don't like the word loophole in a way because it sounds a little kind of disrespectful. Because you kind of, if you find a loophole, it's like, you know, you see what I mean. So, um, so if you upheld that gold standard, if you like, the gold standard of precepts would be what? That Samapapassa Akarana words, right? So that was the ideal thing. But it is too abstract in certain cases, so sometimes we are a little sort of, lacking mindfulness, a little muddled, so we can't sort of relate to that. So precepts help. Okay, Buddha says don't do it. Okay, we don't do it. So it helps. But certain times we should contemplate not only these precepts, but in general, are we in the wholesome side? Are we in the unwholesome side? These things should be contemplated. These things, the precepts themselves shouldn't be taken for granted. So there's this difference of these precepts and the sila, the virtue. And then there's this one sutta that says, okay, there are these 5 unwholesome things which hinder one's practice, which are like killing, stealing, adultery, lying, and intoxication. The first 5 things covered by the 5 precepts. So, then Lord says, in order to tackle that problem, one should develop satipatthana, he says. Now, this is something we know already. Most of meditators are here. They, one way or the other, have learned about these things, heard about these teachings. So basically, you are being mindful. So the mindfulness is a very important thing, a very important support for your sila. So without the mindfulness, without sati, it's difficult to keep sila. I think you already realized that. So the sila is reinforced, supported by mindfulness, and in turn, by keeping sila, the mindfulness also goes up. So it kind of goes hand in hand. It kind of helps, because the point of all this practicing is not just being virtuous. There were certain traditions in India actually. They may be more focused on the virtue, doing the right thing. That's itself, in and itself, is not enough. That's not the purpose. So the purpose would be we move on. We develop these other qualities. We meditate. We develop sati. So keeping precepts is a very important foundation for you to develop sati, because it's an exercise. So when it comes to sati, the mindfulness, maybe there are these few things we should sort of reminded of. Like we should sort of keep revisit these points, because the sati, the subject of mindfulness, it is a tricky area, I would say, because after many years of meditation, still sometimes people might find that if someone asked she or him what is mindfulness, what is sati, sometimes we don't know actually how to sort of explain this thing. We know, we practice to a certain extent, but we're quite not sure actually what to say. So the sati, when we say I'm try to develop mindfulness. I'm being mindfulness. So today also, you all try to be mindful. Uh, so when we imagine someone is being mindful, so the first that mental image comes to you is that you take everything slowly. So we try to be attentive, and especially this kind of you try to sort of engage slowly with things. That's the prevalent idea of being mindful. And you try to be aware of your surroundings. So that is a very essential part of being mindful, but it doesn't cover quite the whole story. Now, when we look at the sutras, uh, there are these couple of places, more than a couple actually, that Lord Buddha defines the term sati, the mindfulness. He says a person would be able to recall, reminding himself or herself that the things they've heard, certain things they're supposed to remember. Basically, the Pali terms are like sarati, anusarati. Certain things depends on the purpose you are going, whatever you're going to do with it. But generally, the function is you should be able to remember, recall certain things you've been told, certain instructions were given, something like that. So now we are trying to be mindful, taking them slowly, everything, and try to be aware of your surroundings. And yet, Lord Buddha says, you're supposed to be able to recall, remember certain things. How can we kind of connect with these two ideas? It seems like a little kind of off-putting, don't you think? Like what you're supposed to remember while you're on mindfulness. Maybe you're kind of you get the sense that we are kind of going with this. So Ajahn Brahm gives a wonderful simile for this thing. The right kind of mindfulness, which is like one of my favorite and one of very important teachings of Ajahn Brahm. I haven't seen anyone else. As a monastic, I've listened to so many speakers, Sri Lankans, Thai forest tradition teachers, but I haven't heard a person explains this idea of mindfulness in like this vividly. So some of you have heard this story, this story of a security guard who's been looking after someone's house. So imagine a person, a well-off person, has a security guard at the gate. That person wants to leave for a party or something, so they leave and instruct the security guard that, okay, be aware, be mindful, who's sort of passing by, because there were news that, some burglars were doing stuff a few days ago. So basically he asked the person to be mindful. So the man says, yes sir, and then off he went. And after he came back, this man, and found out that the front door is open. There's something happened. He walked in, the television and all this stereo and the stuff he had like gone. Went to a room, the cupboard was open, the jewelry was taken, likewise. So it's like mad that this security guard kind of rushed back to the security guard and asked, what are you doing? I mean, what the hell you've been doing actually? Did you see the burglars broke in? And the security guard says, yes, sir, I mean, I saw, sir. I was very mindful. In fact, when the burglars went in, broke in from the front door, I sort of, I reminded myself. I mean, I noticed that burglars going in, burglars going in, burglars going in, and when the people kind of bringing out your stuff, sir, I noticed burglars taking TV, burglars taking the TV, burglars taking the TV, and the burglars taking the jewelry, likewise. So then the person asked, why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you call police? So the guard says, I mean, you asked me to be aware, I mean, you asked me to be mindful, so I did, that's what I did. So I think you understand the problem here. So what this story demonstrates. So being just mindful, being just aware what's going on itself is not enough. Just that security guard did a bad job. Just being aware is not good enough, basically. So I'm not sure actually you can get away with it, like if it happened in the real world as a security guard. So the main point being that as a security guard, he's supposed to call police. If something happens, that's his responsibility. Likewise, sometimes we also experience time to time certain things come up, certain kilesas, certain bothering things coming up, anger, certain stuff. And I was told sometimes that they know actually, Bante, we know, I mean, I know, I get angry sometimes, but I don't know what to do. I know that I'm not in control or something like that. Kind of being a passive, like an observer, but doing nothing. So most of us don't know how to call police, so to speak, when something comes up. So because we in fact we should call police. Just observing is just not good enough, because you get anger and there you go again. You go down the same rut, ended up doing the same thing, same silly mistakes, and then you start to regret. And why did I open my mouth and all these things? So how should we possibly call police here? Now, that's the time we should pay attention to this term, establishing mindfulness. In Sinhala we say Satya Pidona. Sinhalin කියනවා සතිය පිටවන්න, සතිය ඇති කරගන්න. So we've heard about this thing, people, and in fact we also told other people sometimes, like, be mindful. But how can we be mindful actually? What are the things we should do to establish that mindfulness? Now, in the suttas, you see a good example actually. I'm being monastic, so I'm kind of a little biased to this, the more monastic material from the suttas. So with me. So Lord Buddha says, so these are the instructions given to us in the Vinaya suttas also, that how you should be going pindapata in the village. So you wear your robe, you're basically close to the village. You're coming from a monastery or a forest. Close to the village, you rope up and determine, or the word, the term is satikaraniya. You're basically establishing the mindfulness, thinking that, okay, I'm entering to the village. In the village, I might see, hear certain things which might arise raga, dosa, moha. So therefore, I'll be careful. I'll be watching that. So that's the establishing mindfulness for monks. So at least you remember this, this was the instruction. So you can translate that instruction for yourself, exactly what you should be doing, when you are entering to a certain situation. And it is you sort of establishing mindfulness. So once you set that, Ajahn Brahm would like to call it programming mindfulness. His simile would be like, you want to go to the airport, you take a taxi, you tell to the driver at the beginning, take me to the airport. Clear instruction, just, without confusion, just give a clear instruction. I want to go to airport. So that's it. The monk was saying, this thing can happen, I'll be careful. For a certain situation, like sometimes, in workplace or some other situation, sometimes we meet people often, sometimes we agree with them, sometimes we disagree. So time to time we might kind of re-engage with these people and find ourselves arguing again, having a little bit of heated exchange or something. So if you see that, okay, I was called to the boss's office, or I was called to, collaborate in this department or something. So, okay, I know this person is there, or I know that manager or the boss, which I can, I'm not a big fan of that boss. So if he start to sort of boss me around, actually, I'll end up like being defensive, going defensive, and things happen. So how can I sort of rectify the situation? So before you go, before entering to his cubicle or something, you tell to yourself, okay, this argument can come up. I'll be careful. I'll be restrain my mouth. I'll restrain my mouth. I'll restrain my mouth. Something like that. You kind of tell to yourself like 3 times or something. Just a little adhitthana, a little reminder. So if you do that, you start to see. Then onwards, actually, there's this like a mind on alert. Actually, it's a little autopilot kind of thing. If something comes up, automatically you will be taken back to the track by the sati. You don't have to deliberately sort of go and sort of take you back on track. The sati will do that for yourself. But in order to do that, you have to sort of clearly mention to sati, this is a danger I see. I don't want to get into the same rut. I don't want to get into the same pit. I'll be weird. I'll navigate this obstacle carefully. Something like that. So something very short to you. You can sort of make a nice little sentence as a reminder. So there is this sort of a practical, hands-on purpose of mindfulness. You'll be surprised. Actually, you don't have to have like a good samadhi to do this thing. If you start to practice this thing, so if we go back to that Lord Buddha's definition of sati, in the light of these examples, we can understand what he really meant there. So basically what he says, that if you are in a situation, you understand there is something going on in front of you, you should be able to recall actually what you should be doing when something like this happens. Certain thoughts comes up, they come up, and then you sort of give this remedy, because I was told like that. I heard this Dhamma talk. I read this sutta. You should be dealing with this like this, not like thieves coming in, but I don't do anything. Just thieves kind of break into home. We don't do anything. We just observe. Time to time, these thieves kind of keep coming back. We are very used to this thing, so that we are not improving the situation. But if we remember, actually, okay, wait, this kilesa comes up. At least this time, I'll put a dent on it. Maybe I won't be able to sort of stop it at one go. But I'll kind of change the situation. I won't be sitting back and just watch passively this time. So something like that. So Ajahn Brahm summarizes that sati, the idea of sati, like remembering the instructions. Like the Buddha said, the sati is being you should be able to recall a certain thing. So in this case, you should remember the instructions by the Kalyana Mitta, by your teachers. So sati has that sort of function. So we have this paying attention to a certain thing function. Just attention itself is not good enough. So whatever the data you gather, whatever the experience you experience by paying attention should be dealt with a certain strategy, a certain tactic Lord Buddha told us to do. So that kind of a mindfulness, so it's a total solution. It's a total. It's not like a half of the thing, because then we have this problem, or like a phenomenon rather, that you hear this term secular mindfulness, and so certain things like the Vipassana movement, for an instance, went to US, and then certain practitioners, actually like medical practitioners who did Vipassana, actually picked up this experience of this sati, mindfulness can be used in a clinical situations. So we can basically separate this the mindfulness practice from this religious sort of context, because some people otherwise not be happy, that they are not willing to sort of practice these things. It's most predominantly Christian country. So the mindfulness sort of like secularized and like now practiced in these countries. And certain practitioners, even within that country, like US, sometimes question this thing, like, can you really separate these two? Because it has a context, and like maybe it might not work properly. Some people actually there are skeptics. So in this at this point, I should mention this idea, this point also. Lord Buddha says, so there is this noble eightfold path. The Pali term is like Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, and so forth. So Lord Buddha says there are these Samma aspect of the path, and there is this miccha aspect of the path. If you don't follow the path quite correctly, it might become like a miccha of it. You are still doing something, you are practicing something, but it's not quite the right uh, uh, thing as Lord Buddha described. So you may be having some samadhi, but in order to find the right liberation, it has to be right samadhi, not the wrong samadhi, something like that. So there is this samma ditti and there is this miccha ditti. So in order to now beginning with the samma ditti, the rest of the factors, path factors, in order to they become samma, the first factor should be samma as well. That's the beginning, which is the views. The dittis, the views has to be samma. If that is correct, the rest will fall into places. That's the idea. That's a very important principle. Otherwise, people from the outside the sasana, outside the Buddha sasana, also develop certain qualities. Very impressive. Lord Buddha say that sometimes even Lord Buddha praised certain people had like good samadhi, but they had this issue, they had this limp, so to speak, of not having the right attitude. Therefore, they couldn't break through before the Buddha's time. Lord Buddha learned this from these people, and he understood that the view aspects has to be corrected, and everything was like falling into places, and he broke through, something like that. So the wheel has to be samma and the rest becomes samma. And when it comes to the mindfulness also has samma sati and miccha sati. A typical miccha sati situation would be like that anecdote I just, that simile I just gave you. You just observe, but you don't do anything. So that's miccha sati. Or like this secular mindfulness people, sometimes they kind of apply these things across the board, nothing to do with any sort of developing a skill, like a skill according to Buddhism, but it's a kind of a skill maybe in their mind. Like one time I heard like how they were like contemplating introduce sati for sharpshooters, for an instance. So you can sort of you can be more sort of focused, and you can do a better job when you're shooting at someone. So that's also sati, application of sati. But is that samma sati? Absolutely not. So when it comes to secular mindfulness, I mean, at least it's better than nothing in my mind. But I think generally we have to be careful actually where we are going with these things. We have to keep them in perspective, at least if someone is not keen on developing samma sati, at least they should know actually this is sort of separated, this is miccha sati according to the Buddhism. So the sati become samma sati if the views are correct. So views in this situation is that again remembering the instructions. You know what to do with these things. You know that actually you shouldn't be shooting at people. Something like that. So I think so that sort of covers some basic aspects of samadhi and sati and mindfulness. And there's this one last point I would like to bring up, that Venerable Sariputta at some point he gives like an ovada for the Sangha, and he sort of explains that you see certain sutras that this leads to this and that leads to the next one. So sort of a cause and sort of a effect, sort of a relationship. So he's sort of explaining these certain qualities actually. Or in order to develop this quality, uh, this quality would be useful in order to develop the other quality, something like that. So he sort of is coming down one by one down the chain, and he says, in order to develop sati, you should be doing yoniso manasikara. That's a term, that right contemplation. You contemplate according to the Dhamma, according to the principles. Because that's sort of a contemplation. What should I be doing, or what shouldn't I do? Something like that. So that sort of a contemplation definitely helps for you to become mindful later on in those circumstances. So that's also remembering the instructions, right? While when you kind of contemplate these things, you sort of reinforce this sort of a response. You sort of hard code it, so to speak, in you that this is a bad thing. I'm not going to succumb to this sort of a behavior or something like that. So if you've done that homework of contemplating these things, that's definitely going to be helpful. So hence the right contemplation of this sort of the term is Pachavekana and the Yonasomansikara. That certainly helps to develop sati, because after all, these things are like checkpoints in your mind. You arrive to a certain incident and there's a checkpoint that, okay, I should be doing this. That's sort of like you set these checkpoints and as a reminder what you should be doing. So contemplation also helps. Contrary to the idea that, in order to develop sati, maybe you should be doing stuff slowly. You should be taking stuff slowly. Not necessarily sometimes. When you're performing your task in your daily life, you can't sort of do it slowly, right? I mean, people might find it kind of funny if you. No, I try to be mindful, but sometimes it's not practical. So, but at least if you sort of have that checkpoint, so once you pass that checkpoint, it'll trigger a response. Okay, I should do this, something like that. So these are these are some aspects of sati, mindfulness. So I think now I'm kind of talked maybe 1 hour. So if I keep talking, people start to get into sleep. So maybe I should stop. So I think we should think about these things. You should contemplate what I've just said. So it'll and sort of do a kind of a comparison, and so then you'll sort of you'll have a good opinion about this thing. You will remember, and that itself is remembering instructions. So please do that. So I think this little talk helps for all of you. So I would like to wish you good luck and have a good meditation in this day-long retreat. So have a wonderful time. Thank you. Oh, by the way, maybe I can quickly ask somebody. Do you have any kind of a quick question? Maybe there'll be some Q&A time later on, I think, also in the afternoon. But do you have like a quick question? Maybe. So I'll give you a short answer. Okay, I think everyone is happy. So okay, so now it's tea time, I guess. Okay. So thank you for listening.